to today's green room. Your call is very important to us. Mastering telephone etiquette. I chose this topic for today because obviously we have a lot of service that we all provide using the phone. In fact, I would venture to guess that most likely 30% of what we do is probably over the phone. So knowing that, we know that we have to definitely not just do a good job on the phone, but we have to use it as a way that we can make a difference, a way that we can differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. So I don't know about you, but think about it. Were you trained to use the phone? Were you trained on telephone etiquette? Was there someone that actually gave you telephone training? I thought about it a little bit and I thought, well, I picked up a little bit along the way, but it wasn't actually something that I actually sat in a room and I received training on. So I think this is a great webinar for you to be able to share for a lot of your staff, share with a lot of your staff if you have the opportunity. The reason being is that this topic is critical for them, specifically for quite a few of your millennials. Let me share with you why. I just found this article just today, and I thought you might really appreciate it. So this was from the Chicago Sun-Times, and this was the end of last year. But this particular article says, millennials hate talking on the phone, survey says. Okay, fine. Well, no surprise, right? And a lot of us actually have millennials on staff, so I'm sure you've encountered it already where you're going, why can't I get this person to just pick up the phone when I call them about a shift, or to call me and let me know when they aren't going to be available for their shift today? Well, they hate talking on the phone. So you wonder, and I've seen a lot of these articles, and I think to myself, okay, why? Why do they hate talking on the phone? So if you read this article, it's really interesting. It says, millennials hate talking on the phone and are likely to decline calls they receive, according to a survey released based on this a website based on BankMySal, a website that analyzes technology, trade, and recycling programs. 1,200 people surveyed would rather talk via WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and Snapchat. Okay, so that in and of itself throws us into a complete separate idea of texting etiquette, which we'll talk about another day. But for today, I want to think about why do you think they hate picking up the phone? What's the problem? Well, the reality is a lot of them have not been trained on how to use the phone. So there is actually a phenomenon called, get this, ready? And you're going to laugh, phonophobia. It's a thing. It's a real thing. They're afraid of the phone. They're afraid of picking up the phone. They have anxiety when the phone rings. Most of them have turned their ringers off at this point. They don't even have a ringer anymore. They don't know what to say whenever they pick up the phone, so their greetings sound awkward. The way they open a conversation is awkward. They don't pick up the phone for their parents, for their bosses, even for their loved ones. They are so conflict avoidant that they don't know what to do. So a lot of that really comes from them not knowing the fundamentals of telephone etiquette, truthfully. It's just not, has become a bit of a lost art in our world. And as I said at the beginning, when we know that about 30% at least of what we do in hospitality really has to do with telephone service, that's not good. This anxiety can negatively impact the service that we provide. Think of how many times you have had an applicant not call you to follow up on a interview. How many times have you had a employee not call you to let you know that they're sick or running late or won't be in? Instead, they will text you. Phonophobia. So this is why I think mastering telephone etiquette is going to be something that really benefits all of you. And again, as I said at the beginning, take this opportunity to perhaps use today's webinar as a way for you to be able to maybe give them some tips and tricks so that they are feeling more comfortable with how they are able to communicate, how your staff is able to communicate. So use these and use these as a way to maybe begin the dialogue or start creating some training around it. So I'm going to give you not 10, not 11, but 12 etiquette tips. And I think these are going to help in a lot of different ways. I'm going to be brief, but as you know where to find me. So if we need to deep dive into any of these, I want to with you. I think it's going to be really valuable, and get yourself off of mute anytime you want, because I'd love to talk with these about you and situations that you've had, and hopefully if we have some time for practice, we can do that. Okay, number 1, refrain from background noise and mouth noises. So some of you might know this already, but a big part of what we do here at Guest Service Solutions has to do with telephone training, specifically in the sales arena. And so we listen to hundreds of calls every year. And so I'll just give you a sampler platter of some of the mouth noises that we hear on a regular basis. So we hear clicking, we hear heavy breather, the heavy breather on the phone, we hear the suckerfish, we hear the suckerfish a lot. What are other mouth noises? Mouth noises could be just anything that's clicking, anything that has to chewing gum, mouth noises. What's wrong with mouth noises? I mean, I'm a human being. I make mouth noises. Well, the problem is that the telephone can become a microphone. So when you talk with something in your mouth, it just sounds like you have a mouthful of mush, a beverage, food, gum, whatever the case may be. So empty your mouth before you pick up the phone, and make sure that whenever you are having a conversation, that you're clear in the conversation and you're not trying to think aloud by making clicking sounds and breathing sounds. You just sound like Darth Vader. Number 2, answer every call properly with the same greeting every time, no matter what. This sounds very simple, yet this is something that can even stump the most veteran of us. So it's not difficult, but if I called 100 people within your resort, I'm betting that I would get a number of various ways that people answer the phone. And I believe that there should be one uniform method externally and one uniform method internally, that every call should be answered. Why? Because this creates consistency, and that consistency becomes explicit and implicit. Explicit meaning that that guest then sees that, oh, you have standards, you have an expectation. Wonderful. Internally, you're also communicating to everybody what your culture is also about. So get in that habit of, good afternoon, thank you for calling our resort. This is Erica, how may I help you? Get in that habit of internally saying, housekeeping, this is Erica, how may I help you? So even if I know that it's somebody at the restaurant, I don't pick up the phone and say, what do you need, Bob? I want to get in the habit always of making sure that my internal and external greetings are consistent every time, no matter what. This is a non-negotiable. Number 3, use a vacation tone. Vacation tone, what's that and who cares? So tone. Tone of voice is obviously a very big percentage, a very big part of someone's perception of your overall likability as a person. So I can say a lot without saying much at all, just with my tone of voice. How much on the phone? A lot more than you would think. In fact, 80% of my message over the phone, my likability, has to do with my tone of voice. Not the words, it is my tone of voice. Thank you for calling our resort. This is Erica speaking. How may I help you? Well, I pretty much sound like I'm about to go into a coma. If I use a vacation tone, what are some elements of that, would you say? Elements are relaxed. Elements are easy. Elements are everything is great here. It's a beautiful day here. When are you going to be here? That kind of a thing, right? So it sounds more like, thank you for calling our resort. This is Erica. How may I help you? That sounds more inclusive, more like I want this person to be part of this. So consider how much tone influences other aspects of a conversation as well. So let's say, for example, you're a restaurant and you don't have any availability that evening. Well, I could certainly sound like Debbie Downer pretty fast about that and say, I'm sorry, the earliest reservation time we have is 9 o'clock. Do you want that? Well, not now. I don't want to eat there at all. You could be the best restaurant in the world, but if your hostess sounds like that, I will find another place to dine. So tone of voice is going to carry that. If I have a vacation tone, I might say, I am so sorry. It appears to me that the earliest reservation availability we have is 9 o'clock. Good news is, though, that we do have a reservation available, so you can have a cocktail at the bar, relax a little bit. I'll bet you could maybe even have an appetizer and then actually have your entree in the restaurant. Can I make that reservation for you? The tone of voice is completely different. Yes, the words are there as well, so congruency is key. But the vacation tone is what's going to help to drive that yes, to make that yes happen, which we'll get to in a minute. Number 4, guests don't know what they don't know. So, what kind of vehicle should I drive when I get to your resort? What kind of meal plans do you offer? What is the weather going to be like when I go there in 6 months? Do you offer discounts for locals? Do you have, some of the questions are just ridiculous, and we know that. But they don't know what they don't know. So sometimes you can almost hear the exasperation of a staff member on the phone. Right? Do I have to answer this question again for the 70th time? And yes, you do, because that is what we're there for. Our job is to be of service to that guest. So we want to create an environment for our staff where they remember that our guests don't know what they don't know. And we are the professionals in that moment in time. By the way, side note, feel free to use that text chat box anytime if you have a question or a concern, or again, take yourself off of mute, because this is an open forum. I encourage conversation at any time. So please feel free to do that if you want to. The next one, do the work. Don't make your guests do it. I think of this particular example once upon a time of a situation where a guest had called from their room to the front desk asking for a cell phone charger. And that guest spoke with someone in PBX. That PBX operator transferred that guest over to the concierge. The concierge wasn't able to find something, transferred that guest over to the bell stand. The bell stand couldn't find something, transferred that guest over to housekeeping. The housekeeper wasn't able to find something, transferred the guest back over to the bell stand. That's a lot of work. And then eventually it gets back to the guest, and the guest still doesn't have a cell phone charger. And that's a lot of work. Often, especially with our younger staff, they don't know how to say, I'm not sure, but let me find out. Or I'm sure we can find a cell phone charger somewhere. Can you give me 5 minutes and I'll call you back and let you know how soon we can have one sent up to you? So we need to be able to give them just the very quick kind of I don't know answer that doesn't sound like I don't know, and then help them in the background to be able to give that right answer. So again, this is one of those things where it sounds so obvious for those of us that have been in the business for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, but someone who's been in only for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, they don't understand this. Don't make your guests do the work. If a guest calls and asks for somebody and that somebody is not available, we don't say to that guest, so can you call back later, please? Because that person isn't here right now. Instead, what we should say is, can I please take a message for you and I'll have that person call you back? I have noticed a lot, specifically with younger staff members, that they are more inclined to tell people to call back. I think that's crazy. So we need to remind them to not make guests do the work. They are our guests. It is not as much of a self-service world as they would like to think it is. Number 6, listen generously. On the phone, a lot of things can get lost in interpretation. Tone of voice helps a lot with being able to uncover some things, and we need to make sure that we're remembering some of those generous listening skills that we know. Listening generously means that you're giving the other person the experience of being understood. So that's a key distinction between just hearing something and actually listening generously. So it's saying things like, I completely understand why you would feel that way. Or, yes, I feel like 9 o'clock is a little late for dinner for me as well. Or, so tell me more about that. So these techniques that we can use are going to help us to always find a win in a conversation in person as well as over the phone. Yes, nonverbal listening in person, but the rest of these can certainly be used over the phone. Emotion labeling. That means calling out the emotion you're hearing, paraphrasing a summary in your own words, mirroring, saying back an exact word or phrase that a guest uses, taking some pauses in a conversation, and then using minimal encouragers. Number 7. Oh, and of course, open-ended questions. Absolutely. They start with what, or how, or why. Number 7, there's always a way to say yes. So telephone etiquette means that we don't shut a conversation down. Rather, we create a new possibility sometimes in conversations, for sure. So if we're creating a yes in a conversation, then we're saying, let me tell you what I can do. Or, hey, I have another option for you. Here's another good one. Can I look into some alternatives and see what might be possible, and then I'll call you back? How about, tell me more about that? Instead of saying, but, you could say, yes, and sometimes instead of saying no, you could say nothing at all. And that will definitely accomplish the same thing. Another way you could say yes, instead of saying no, you could say, I'll be honest, I know that the best that we'll be able to do is X. Let's see, here's another one. As much as I would love to accommodate you this afternoon, I'm just not seeing a single bit of availability. I'm thrilled to see though that we can squeeze in a massage before you check out tomorrow though. Shall we secure this time? So again, vacation tone is going to carry that. So I am saying no, but I'm not saying no without a let me tell you what I can do. Here's another one. As much as I would love to weave Egyptian cotton sheets for you tonight at midnight, I know that's not possible. I am grateful to know what kind of sheets you're looking for so that we can anticipate that for you next time. So for now, here's what I can do. Even though we don't have private Tesla car service, I know who does. I have a number for you. So I'm not saying no, I'm saying I have a possibility for you. Here's the last one. If I could nail a table and chairs to the wall for you tonight, I absolutely would, Mrs. Johnson. You know we love having you and your family. I'm so sorry that we're so full this evening. Would you mind if I made a few phone calls to some of my personal favorites to see if we might be able to get you a table somewhere else tonight? So sometimes just being able to help in some way is better than not helping at all. There's no reason to shut down a conversation. So sometimes I think of this one time when I called a restaurant. It was a new restaurant that was in town here in Pittsburgh, and they were very popular, and they knew that they were very popular, and I behaved badly, let's say. Maybe I behaved badly. Well, you can tell me if I behaved badly. Because I called them, and we were very happy to actually have a free evening. So I called, and the hostess answered the phone like this. Thank you for calling. This is whatever restaurant. Can I help you? And I said, hi, I'm calling to find out if you have any reservation times available tonight. The earliest reservation time that we have is 8:30. And she said it about as plainly as that. And I said, wow, okay, that's pretty late. Do you take walk-ins? And she said, well, you can try, but we're usually pretty busy. And I said, okay, thank you. Is there a wait list or anything? She said, no. Just sort of like that. And then the last thing, I kind of knew that I was sort of hitting a brick wall at this point, and I said, all right, thank you very much. I have one more question for you. Is everybody there as rude as you are? And I think I kind of stopped her in her tracks, because she just went, oh my God, sort of really taken aback by what I had just said. And I stopped and I said, well, I feel like I'm really trying here and you're not. And I mean, and then at the end of that, I said something to the effect of Merry Christmas, and then I hung up on her. So yeah, I don't really tolerate inappropriate tone or people that don't try. So often that gets misconstrued, particularly by staff that's not trained very well to handle phone calls, as guests being rude, when in actuality it may sound a little bit more like it may sound a little bit more like it's actually that staff member who's really not trying to accept guests. So give that some consideration. Number 8, thank guests for holding. Being put on hold still remains one of the top 3 frustrations of the American public. That being said, it's something that often needs to be done during a phone call, I understand. Knowing how to put someone on hold is certainly important, but then so is thanking them for holding as well. So it might sound something to the effect of, Linwood, would you mind if I placed you on a brief hold while I found that information for you? And Linwood is 98% of the time going to say, yes, absolutely. And then I'm going to say, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And then when I come back, I can then pick that conversation back up and say, thank you so much for holding. I truly appreciate it. So the key here is to give your guest a reason for why you're placing them on hold. Give them incentive to wait. So if I'm going to place a guest on hold or a person on hold, I shouldn't just say, can you hold please? I might say, would you please hold for just a moment while I find that information? Or would you mind holding for a moment so I can check our availability over that time period? Or would you please hold for a moment so I can connect with housekeeping and find out how soon they might be available to clean your room? Give me some incentive for holding, and then I will be happy to do so. Number 9, address guests by name. This is a standard for upscale luxury hotels and resorts, and in every conversation it is expected. For whatever reason, we all seem to like our name. I think it's because we all appreciate being recognized as individuals. And so we're finding more and more millennials specifically in the upscale and luxury world, more millennial guests are responding to telephone, using the telephone, even though we are investigating more of that texting kind of service for kind of the basic stuff. Millennials are doing more inbound calling to hotels and resorts to make sure that they are making the right choice when they are actually selecting a hotel or a resort. So using that guest's name is a way that we can kind of get back to basics and really personalize, show more of a customization of what we do. So it is an expectation. And it's a requirement also for transferring guests properly, doing what we call a warm transfer. So don't abuse using a guest's name, but do include it throughout the conversation if warranted. As a rule of thumb, if it's a brief conversation, like a couple of minutes, one time is plenty. If it's a 30-minute conversation, twice. But don't get crazy with it. Number 10. Start guest service recovery. So I say this in terms of starting because if you're able to really follow through in guest service recovery in person, that's best, of course. And some of our PBX team or host staff, line level staff, they might be more comfortable with just being able to get started with what we call empathy, creating a cushion and apologizing and saying, I'm so sorry that happened to you. This is horrible. I need to connect you with the appropriate person because you shouldn't have had to wait like that, or whatever the case may be. So for those of you that are in more of a managerial role or have to actually make those big decisions, clearly a full guest service recovery, but I would encourage your line level staff to be in the habit of beginning guest service recovery. So beginning the react, respond, recover, +1, and remind them of the importance of that cushion. So this is where they can say, there's nothing more frustrating than having to wait for 45 minutes for your table. Number 11, conduct proper telephone transfers. Proper telephone transfer is a warm transfer. And a warm transfer is that you make sure that the person you're transferring to is aware of who is coming to them, and you want to make sure that that person that you're transferring to is actually there. If that person is not there, you definitely want to make sure that the guest is aware that that person is not available at that moment. Mr. Smith, thank you so much for holding. I was able to connect with Thomas, and he is available right now. May I transfer you? Thank you very much, and have a great day. All right, that's considered a warm transfer. Mr. Smith, I just checked, and it appears that Thomas is not available at this moment in time. I'm more than happy to take a message, or I would be happy to also transfer you directly to his voicemail. Which would you prefer? Lovely. I will transfer you right now. Thank you. Have a great day. That would be considered a proper telephone transfer. And then last but certainly not least, ending a call or transferring a call, ending with a fond farewell. Thank you. Have a delightful day. It has been a pleasure. Saying goodbye. I am absolutely floored at how many people don't say goodbye anymore. It kills me. People just hang up the phone. So even though it seems like these things are maybe becoming lost arts, they're not. I was raised by an English teacher, and I have a 13-year-old son right now who I'm consistently told by other people has exceptional telephone manners. So I know that it matters. I do know that it matters. And when you see that you have so many of these hot staff members currently that have phonophobia, I think the onus is upon us to give them some more tips and tricks and training in this area. And it is basic stuff because they don't know what they don't know. So I've just given you 12. Do you have any others that you want to add or anything that you want to share? We still have a minute or two where we can connect about it. So if you have something, sock it to me. Burning questions, issues, what do you got? not seeing anything coming through text chat right now, and no one's coming live. So if I do, I will stop. But for now, I just want to remind you of the schedule for 2019. So our next event is March 28th, Thursday, March 28th, and it's Keeping It Real, leveraging high-touch hospitality in a high-tech world. So the idea here is going to be smile when talking on the phone. Yes, please. I can hear a smile. I promise you. When your mouth opens up, you project more. So it absolutely can be heard. And I can also hear it when a staff member is leaning like this, or if they are picking up the phone and they're like this, and they're creating a sound cave, sort of like this. So you'll want to have a conversation with dining reservations about how they're sitting up and sitting back, or your reservation staff or your PBX team. So make sure that they're sitting up and projecting, and that they are inviting interaction with their smile, for sure. So leveraging high-touch hospitality in a high-tech world. So how do you achieve the balance of making sure that you're not losing the human element of hospitality whenever you have all of this technology that's coming at your guests, as well as kind of coming at you at the same time? What's the balance? So if you have some thoughts or ideas or questions about that, you know where to find us. Email me, text me, call me. Call me. Yeah, call me. I promise you that I'll answer the phone with the same greeting that I always do. That's a promise. All right, so thanks everybody for participating today, and I'll see you next month. Have a great day. Bye.